Good afternoon, and welcome to another exciting webinar in the Department of Navy's Office of Small Business Programs Lunch and Learn. We started these series as a result of the pandemic and had such a wonderful response, we decided to continue them. Today's topic is unlocking innovation, leveraging Nautilus for defense technology transfer. Nautilus is a public-private partnership between Naval X and Defense Works. Our speaker today is Mr. Graham Plaster, the director of Nautilus. Nautilus is on a mission to accelerate warfighter access to emerging technology. Prior to leading Nautilus, Graham was the founder of the Intelligence Community, Inc., which is a global social network of over 150,000 defense and intelligence professionals. His active duty military experience includes liaison work with the United Nations, State Department, and NGOs across the Middle East and North Africa. Graham is Assistant Dean of Students for the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island, and deployment as a surface warfare officer during Iraqi freedom. In the nonprofit space, Graham has served on the board of the Foreign Area Officer Association. He's also a best-selling author of the book In the Shadow of Greatness. So for you all today, we introduce Mr. Graham Plaster.
Hey, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today and an honor to speak to this audience. And you could cue up my slides, that'd be great. And thank you for the introduction. I have with me also on call today my program manager from Nautilus. If you'd like to say a couple words, Hyatt.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hyatt, and I am the program manager for Nautilus. For those of you who already know me or have seen me speak before, you know I introduce myself as the panelist in the shadows because I'm always camera down. Our Nautilus director, Graham Plaster, is going to be leading the presentation, but if anyone has questions for me or anything specific for me, I am here, I am listening, so please feel free to engage with me. Really quickly to add, Nautilus, a DefenseWorks partnership with Naval X. The biggest piece of what we do is find innovative solutions for sailors and Marines by helping to integrate novel technologies to our warfighters. Nautilus has an extensive ecosystem of resources. So not only can we help Navy and Marine Corps, we have resources for other services, interagency partners, et cetera. So again, for those of you who don't know who or what Nautilus is, or even what a PIA is, which I should mention is a quite underutilized piece of the contracting pie because many people don't know about it, please ask us, please join our ecosystem. Feel free to engage with us. And with that, Graham, I turn it back to you.
Thanks, Hyatt. So I'm not sure how many are on the call today, but I'm going to be talking to these slides and then taking questions. And Mercedes, did you want to add anything else before I get started?
Just make sure all participants put any questions that you might have in the question and answer box, as we will be monitoring that and not the chat. Over to you, Graham.
Okay, great. And I'm going to be dropping a link in the chat and speaking to that. But if you see this one from Defense Acquisition University, I'll probably share it again as people come in. But I'm Graham Plaster, the director of Nautilus, which is a public-private partnership between DefenseWorks and Naval X. Can you go to the next slide, please? And so a lot of people are not familiar with what Title 15 is. If you look at the link I just dropped in the chat, it shows you a cone of contracting opportunities with the federal government. It's on Defense Acquisition University's website, and you can see all the different ways that companies can engage with the federal government. And you can see that there's FAR-based or federal acquisition regulation-based ways to do that, and there's non-FAR-based ways to do that. And so we're on the non-FAR side, on the right side of the cone, if you click on that. And we fall under Title 15, which at the top of this slide says Title 15 Partnership Intermediary Agreement, PIA. And so if you go to the Defense Acquisition University website, you can click on the Title 15 stuff and read all about PIAs, and that's what we are. So we are a public-private partnership, or a PIA, between DefenseWorks, which is a nonprofit down in Florida, Niceville, Florida. And our government sponsor is Naval X. And Naval X, if you maybe know already, is kind of the Navy's innovation organization. They fall underneath Office of Naval Research, but they have a bunch of programs running to try to figure out novel and new and non-traditional ways to solve problems for the Navy and the Marine Corps. So between DefenseWorks and Naval X, we formed that partnership under Title 15, and we are called Nautilus. And part of the reason why we're called Nautilus is because there's a heritage of that word in the maritime space. You have the first nuclear submarine was called Nautilus, but also if you've ever read or seen 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, that fantastical ship called Nautilus. So we capture both the real world innovation and also the fantastical imaginary innovation in our ecosystem and in our hub. So if you look at the bottom of the slide, the big tent philosophy is what all of the DefenseWorks hubs do. We try to bring people together. We try to be inclusive and create on-ramps and basically create an ecosystem of different types of creative problem solvers. So that can be inclusive of your company, whatever you do. It can be inclusive of individual hackers and makers and builders with a federally funded research development corporations, FFRDCs, national laboratories. All of those are invited into our ecosystem. Next slide, please. And we refer to ourselves as a platform, as a PIA, because we're really a tool, one tool in the tool belt of the Navy and the Marine Corps to do a number of things. And so I'll talk about the different things that we can do, and I'll take some questions. But as a platform, the Navy and the Marine Corps can do a lot of different things using the Title 15 authorities. And oftentimes we find that people within the federal government don't know that much about Title 15 and Title 10, which give them, some superpowers they don't know that they have. Next slide. DefenseWorks currently has 12 innovation hubs. So this map needs to be updated. We just added 3 more this year. And so you'll see on the left a listing of some of the ones. We started out with a partnership with the Air Force Research Lab down in Niceville, Florida with the Doolittle Institute. And from there, we started one in Tampa, Florida called SoftWorks. So you might be familiar with that one. That's really kind of our flagship, the largest hub that we have. And that's funded by SOCOM. And then we also have a new one that would be interesting to a lot of you out in Monterey called FleetWorks. It's brand new this year. And we're partnering with them on a project right now. So we have Nautilus and FleetWorks working together. We have one that's funded by the intelligence community called ICWorks and a number of other. And what's cool is that all of these hubs work together. So in a lot of cases, there are problems that the federal government has that are interagency. So for instance, Homeland Security had a problem this year where they really wanted to find out new and emerging technologies for underwater propulsion. And so this was of interest to the Coast Guard. And of course, it's also of interest to the Navy. So we were able to get some subject matter experts from the Navy to go over and speak and be available for the Coast Guard through our network of innovation hubs. And once again, we all operate underneath the nonprofit umbrella of DefenseWorks, which allows us to form these partnerships with all of the federal laboratories and government agencies that we work with. Next slide, please. So what can a PIA do? A public Partnership Intermediary Agreement. We focus on non-traditional companies. So if you know your way around government contracting, you might not need us, but we still could talk a little later in this conversation about how you can still get involved with what we do. But really what we're designed to do is to help that federal laboratory or government organization reach out and find companies that aren't normally selling into the government. So you might say, hey, we have this problem and it doesn't seem like we're getting anybody bidding on it on SAM.gov. Can we see if we can do kind of a tech search and find some other technologies that are out there? And in the meantime, maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe we're solving for the wrong X. And so that's really what the PIA is designed to do, is to actually hold the conversation in a neutral way that allows both the government and the non-traditional companies to kind of come up with better solutions. Number two, we emulate private sector operations because we're a nonprofit and we're not a government contractor and we're not a government organization. We can, run fast and we can do things like a lean startup would. We systematically address business barriers. We have proven methodologies. If you go to SoftWorks' website, you can see all the track record that they've done transitioning technologies for SOCOM and doing a lot of really cool stuff there. We're quick and proactive, and we're neutral, as I mentioned, and we always go for the best solution. So it doesn't necessarily mean we have to go with a non-traditional company. In some cases, we do end up sourcing technology for the government from a traditional company. And like I said earlier, you can be in the ecosystem without being, while still being very familiar with government contracting. So we'll get more into the weeds on that later. Next slide. So what does a PIA do? If you read Title 10 and Title 15 summaries on the defense acquisition link that we dropped in there, you'll see that PIAs are traditionally used for technology transition and transfer between government and the private sector. So from the private sector into government, we call it that spinning in, and from federal labs back out into the commercial space, we call that spinning out. So spin in and spin out processes are the things that PIAs can do. What we do really is up to whoever the federal partner is that we're working with. So since we're working with Naval X and they have a bunch of programs running, we say, Naval X, how can we support the programs that you have? How can we make you guys go faster? We host a lot of innovation collaboration events, once again, to cast that big tent, to invite a lot of different types of organizations to talk to each other. If you go back and read the 9/11 Commission report, you see that one of the things that was found out was that 9/11 might have been prevented if there had been more collaboration across different agencies and organizations. And so PIAs really help to solve that problem. We bring people together. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, I call myself a national security community builder. So that's really what we're trying to do, is build that community and keep an ecosystem going in a way that all boats rise together. We also do some outreach for STEM and STEAM events. So working with high schools and colleges on workforce development type activities, because as you guys know, there's always a shortage of clearable technical people. And it's always of interest for some people to go into the commercial space rather than the government space. And so by hosting some of these types of events, we can get talented young people interested in technical problems for the future, and hopefully get them involved with your companies in these projects. We work a little bit with concept prototyping, and that's called different things in different agencies. But if a company comes through our process and has a capability, and then the government agency that we're partnering with says, hey, we really like that, but can we tailor it a little bit and really kind of de-risk it before we purchase anything? Then you can use the Title 15 authorities to do some tailoring before you commit. So we call that a B2B transaction, or business-to-business transaction. So some interesting options there. And our whole mission is to discover new and emerging technology, engage with the private sector, and accelerate whatever the federal government is trying to do. Next slide. All right, so this just kind of walks you through again what the Title 15 authority is legally. Like you said, that link that we dropped in the chat to Defense Acquisition University gives you the various citations from publications to read to really understand what a PIA can do. And there are other types of tools in the tool belt you can look at there. Next slide. Traditionally, the DefenseWorks PIAs have brought in about 86% non-traditional companies. So we still advertise a lot of our events on sam.gov because that gives us a legal coverage to be free and open competition. That gives the government some ability to do some great things. But what we do is we do a lot of market research and go out and find those companies that are not typically aware of government opportunities. We operate as a neutral middle person between the public and the private sectors. And we try to make things very explainable and easy to understand for people that don't know their way around government contracting. So sometimes we'll take a government what we call a desirement, because it might be something that hasn't made it into a full requirement yet. You know, you say you're in the Navy or the Marine Corps, and you say, you know what, it'd be really nice if we could do this, but we don't have funding for it yet. We'd like to get funding for it, and I don't really even know how to formulate a requirement. We call that a desirement. And so it's kind of a slang term inside DefenseWorks. So if we have a desirement and we host an event, then we try to get the non-traditional ecosystem to understand the desirement in non-technical words and less jargon, and then we get them to ideate around that and create solutions. All of our hubs, the DefenseWorks hubs, have our baseline costs covered by our federal partners. So in our case, all of our baseline costs are covered by Naval X. That means that whenever we go out and do a project to try to bring in new technology for the Navy and the Marine Corps or other partners, most of it's already paid for. So, so if you are here and you're a government rep from any organization, you can call us and we can connect you with Naval X leadership, and we can talk about doing a project, and it won't, cut into your budget. If we do follow-on projects to that, of course, we look for partnership with the other agency to take us to the next level. Next slide. And this is generally our process. On top left, it says nomination. Really what that is it's me and Hyatt talking to different people across the government, and they say, you know what, I have a problem, and I'm not getting the results that I want through the traditional government contracting process. And I don't necessarily know exactly what I want yet because, the problem is kind of vague. Okay, so that's the nomination. We start a process once they figure out kind of that general amount of information. They say, okay, let's start the process of using a PIA. So then we start to do some market research, and we advertise an opportunity to the non-traditional space. So we might be reaching out to accelerators, incubators, investor networks, consortia, or just using some search methods that we've developed over the last 10 years within DefenseWorks. And then we do an ecosystem announcement that goes out on sam.gov, that goes out on email blasts, that goes out on social media. We gather all the submissions according to whatever the criteria are the government partner wants to see. And then the government down selects to the ones that they really are interested in. And then the government does one-on-one meetings. So we call that a collaboration event and then an assessment event. And we can do all of that inside of 90 days. So that first circle on the bottom side really can be like a 45-day cycle. And then from there, after one-on-one discussions, it can really go anywhere the government wants to go. They can go into an OTA, into a sole source contract, into a CRADA. You can do what we call the B2Bs. I can go into a program record, type project. So we're neutral. So we actually just create an easy button for the government to de-risk their purchase. Next slide. So our collaboration events really are our bread and butter events. So if you can imagine, if a government organization came to us from the Navy or the Marine Corps and said, we have this problem, let's say with the Blue Angels in this picture, and we think that we could improve some sort of wearable device for our pilots that would monitor biometrics while they're doing aerial stunts. They say, but we'd really like to explore what the non-traditional companies are doing. And we say, okay, well, let's bring in some Blue Angels into a 2 to 3 day workshop, and let's bring in some companies that do wearable tech, and let's have a conversation around that problem set. And once we get to the end of that process, we'll make some recommendations to you guys, and you'll make some decisions. Next slide. And that brings us to an assessment event where the Blue Angels would say, okay, out of the 50 companies that we met at the collaboration event, we really would like to talk to these 5, and we'd like to pay them for their time by giving them some money for white papers to write on how to solve this problem. And one of the reasons why we'd like to see that happen for paying the participants is because we don't want to burn down our ecosystem. We don't want people to spend a lot of time and not get value. So that's one of the things we can do. Okay, next slide. So beyond the collaboration events and assessment events, DefenseWorks PIAs can also do any of these types of things, and we have done many of them in the past. So like I mentioned, STEM and STEAM events for high school, college workforce development. You can do tech sprints if the government says, hey, I like these two software packages, but I'm not sure which one we should buy. Then you can use a PIA to host a bake-off and try them both and see which one's best. Feasibility study, similar idea. We have some of our hubs doing mostly feasibility studies, so the agency can say, hey, I really want to buy a couple different things, but and I'm going to be spending millions of dollars on this, but I don't really know if it's a good purchase yet. So can we use the PIA to dig in a little deeper and come up with some information on which direction we should go? Tech talks, if you have a workforce within your agency that is not that familiar with something, let's say like AI, ML, or blockchain or something, we can bring in some subject matter experts, and host it for government or government and industry, and really kind of inform everyone on the art of the possible. Hackathons, we've done a bunch of those, and those can be great because they can help you identify talent. It can be part of the workforce development process or ideation process. And then rapid prototyping, as I mentioned, we do the B2B option. Next slide. And this is our website, nautilus22.org, because last year was when our hub was established in 2022. And if you go to nautilus22.org, you'll see a button that says join the ecosystem, which allows your company, or even if you're just an individual person or even a government organization, you can join the ecosystem. It's really for anybody. That puts you into our database of capabilities and points of contact. And that way, if we host an event and you have something relevant in your profile, we might reach out and invite you as a participant. And it's always free to companies. We don't take any equity or any fees from companies to participate, but we are relatively exclusive because we want to make sure we get a really good match between what the government's looking for and what the government companies have to offer. So sometimes we kind of jokingly call ourselves eharmony.mil, because we're really trying to bring the different parts together and get a really good match. So I've dropped that link for Defense Acquisition University in the chat a couple times if you guys want to see that and dig into it for research. But now I'm open for questions if you have anything.
Thank you so much for that, Graham. Yes, we have a couple of questions in the chat, so I'll just start with the first one. How does Nautilus measure success? As this seems to be a connector it seems to be the it's tough to make the connector through success. So how are you measuring your success?
So the metrics for transition, the best example really is if you go to the SoftWorks website, because they post all of their metrics publicly, but most of our other hubs do that also. But metrics that we look at are, do we move the needle for whatever the government's trying to achieve? So if they want to host an event and they say, we'd really like to find X. So if we help them find X, then we put that metric up on the website or in a spreadsheet, and we track it. And if they're like, well, we'd really like to find X from, let's say, the CBER grant process, and we'd really like to see if it fits into this program record, well, we can help with that too. And then we track the transfer, the tech transfer from, let's say, CBER to program record. And so you can see spreadsheets on the SoftWorks website that walk you through all the different tech transfer wins that have happened through PIA there. And generally speaking, our metrics are determined by our government partners. So if NavalX comes to us and says, we want you to track X, Y, and Z, that's what we track.
Thank you. Okay, with the rapid advancement in technology, how does Nautilus prioritize which innovative solutions are most critical to the Navy and Marine Corps?
So the Navy and Marine Corps have published, technology priorities. So we generally follow that. And NavalX is a pretty great network of innovation organizations already. NavalX has underneath it 22 different tech bridges that are all over the world. And those tech bridges are usually co-located with combatant with warfare centers, and then also they are generally associated with technology areas, either a certain type of Navy Marine Corps platform or certain technology interests. So that allows the Naval X and the tech bridges to reach out and kind of divide and conquer on some of the Navy Marine Corps technology priorities. So what we do from Nautilus's perspective is kind of run down the seams and kind of fill in the gaps. Generally speaking, we see a lot of interest in unmanned systems, in AI, in energetics, in hypersonics, and the prioritization of those things really just is determined by timing for each of the tech bridges and for Naval X and the organizations. So sometimes you'll see a project or an event coming up that really drives interest in a particular tech stack, and we're just there to support.
Wonderful. Our next question is, can the government participate in any and all collaborative events?
The government can, yes, absolutely, can participate in any of the collaboration events.
All right, next question. This company is in the business of solving problems, leveraging software. Do you have a list of businesses who are interested in helping to solve problems with your partners?
Can you reframe that question? So this is a software company that's asking if we can provide them a list of potential partners. Is that right?
Yes. Or is there some way where they can work with, I guess, people in the ecosystems, or is there some way you can collaborate and connect people that are kind of solving problems to see if they can help each other?
Yeah, I mean, there are some events, I would say more often at some of the older hubs like SoftWorks, where there are if you go down to Soft Week, for instance, there are some events over at SoftWorks where it's more of an open networking type opportunity. I would say if we have a specific event relevant to software and this company were to be invited to that, then obviously they would meet other relevant technology companies that they could potentially partner with.
Perfect. Okay, questions are coming in so fast. I got to make sure I'm getting all of them. First, we had Mr. Zachary. Just wanted to let you know that this was a great overview of Nautilus, and he's learned so much about it. His question wants to know, or his question is, oh, sorry, it disappeared. Okay. Have you or others across DefenseWorks connected with OUSD, ARNI, RDER, and AppFit orgs to learn about their fundings for small and non-traditionals?
Yeah, we're pretty closely aligned with OSD programs, with INSEN and DIU and the other works. Is for instance, if any of you have heard of AFWorks, which is the Air Force kind of version of SoftWorks and Nautilus, it was actually launched by DefenseWorks, and then eventually the Air Force said, we want to make this a government organization. So they took the PIA and they made it a government organization. And so we've been around for a long time, and DefenseWorks is the largest provider of PIAs to the Department of Defense. And so we're very connected to a lot of those other programs that you've mentioned.
Great. Next question. How does Nautilus view the role of public-private partnership in addressing some of the most pressing innovative challenges within the defense sector?
I mean, we think that public-private partnerships are powerful. Some great alliteration, right? And we think that, if you want to take a government organization that is struggling a little bit with bureaucracy and make it go a little faster, then partnering with the private sector is great, but sometimes contracting can incur certain kinds of problems. And so we think that the PIA, where you're partnering with a nonprofit and have a neutral partner that's in the private sector, we think that it can do great things. Obviously, it's not the tool for every situation, but we have great metrics to show that, with 12 different organizations, that we can really help the government move faster and accelerate and do great things.
All right, next question. Have there been any supply chain problems that have been worked on by Nautilus?
Actually, we have a big project that is relevant to supply chain right now. And I can't go into the details, but we should be announcing it hopefully pretty soon. But yeah, we're talking to Naval Sea Systems and NAVSUP, and actually has interest from other services. As many of you on the call might know, that supply chain is very important for resiliency of the force and readiness of the force. So we think that next gen manufacturing technologies are going to play a pivotal role strategically for that, and we're going to help with that.
Right. Next question, kind of along the same lines. Have you seen any government projects or interest in sustainability, such as reducing CO2 in the supply chain?
Yeah, we just set up a new hub underneath DefenseWorks called EnergyWorks, funded by the Department of Energy. And they already have a bunch of projects, I think 3 projects going already after having been established just, I think months ago. So as far as, carbon emissions and, sustainability, I think EnergyWorks is going to be deep into that problem set. And there would be overlap potentially for Navy and Marine Corps problem sets. So, we'll be working hand in glove with EnergyWorks if there are ways that we see, joint opportunities.
Great. Can you speak about sponsoring for facility clearances? Does this apply only to companies working on technologies, or would you sponsor small businesses that will support a professional service contract?
Traditionally, the PIAs are not utilized for professional services companies. But, that being said, we are an ecosystem. So if you have a professional services company and you work with certain types of technologies, there's still ways that you can plug into what we do. We do have the ability as a PIA to sponsor facility clearances for companies if the government wants it. So SoftWorks is actively engaged with that. And Nautilus is not set up to do it yet, but in the future, if NavalX and Office of Naval Research would like to utilize our PIA to do that, then we could potentially sponsor facility clearances.
All right, that sounds great. How does Nautilus perceive the role of blockchain technology in shaping the future of defense innovation? And what opportunities do you see for small businesses within the Department of the Navy's ecosystem to contribute and collaborate in this domain?
So we don't have a demand signal right now for anything in blockchain to be kind of ideated through the Nautilus PIA. I am personally hearing blockchain talked about a lot within the federal government. I'm seeing some stuff over National Science Foundation on that. But at this point, there are not a lot of Navy Marine Corps projects around blockchain that are being worked on our side.
Okay, we have a 2-part question. What has been your transition rate moving from experiments to programs or transitions out of industry? And then as a second part of that, do you work well with or does it work well with MIUs?
MIUs as in Marine Innovation Unit?
They abbreviated, but let's talk to that. And if they have any additional follow-up, they will add additional questions in the chat function.
Yeah, the transition metrics are posted on the hub websites. Generally, since Nautilus is a new hub, we're only a year old, and we don't have a lot of metrics up on our website. But if you look across the board at the DefenseWorks websites, the transition metrics are excellent, and they are published and available. So like I said, start at the DefenseWorks, their website, and go to the SoftWorks website, and you can see all of those transition metrics.
Okay, so we have a follow-up to a question that was asked earlier about government participation. How does government participation in planned events, or how does the government participate in planned events to see how the process works to learn how to use in their own ecosystem?
That's a great question. So, the government's welcome to come and attend any of the DefenseWorks events, and we can if you're on the call and you're in a government organization, you're just curious what it looks like, we can get you an invitation to come see one of the events that's being hosted anywhere in the country. And then we can also have just a kind of a discovery conversation to see what your desirements look like, and we can host an event for you.
Great. What can Nautilus and NavalX do to get more recognition or visibility across the naval services?
So NavalX is going through, a pretty rigorous growth and marketing phase. So I think for those of you who were down at Fed Supernova, you might have down in Austin last week, you might have had a chance to meet with NavalX. They had office hours and they met with a bunch of companies, and you'll see that they're doing a lot to try to get the word out about all the programs that they're running. That said, I think that Nautilus can play a great role at helping to publicize a lot of the great work that's being done at the Tech Bridges and at NavalX. And so we see that as one of our abilities as a nonprofit, is to kind of amplify their message and get it out.
Great. Okay, what initiatives does Nautilus have in place to support the growth and integration of small businesses into the defense innovation ecosystem?
So, I mean, small businesses generally fit in two categories for this question. One would be what we call non-traditional, and the other one would be maybe more traditional GovCon small business. And as a lot of you might know, there are a lot of events and resources that are kind of more geared towards traditional GovCon small businesses. And we can work with both sides. And this is what I was kind of hinting at the beginning of the presentation. So for instance, if Department of the Navy Office of Small Business came to Nautilus and said, hey, we want to host an event, it's just for 8A, it's for woman-owned small business, we can do that. And we can say, let's find all the woman-owned small businesses that are doing cyber, and let's try to figure out which companies can solve problem X. We can do that. So in that situation, if Department of the Navy Office of Small Business Programs came to us and did that, then we would do market research and go out and find a bunch of these types of companies, and we would invite you to the event. We would host the event, educate you on the problem, and you would get personally invited. And it would be publicly advertised. So publicly advertised through our social media outreach and our email distro. So once again, if you join the ecosystem on our website, then you would get invited to that type of thing. And for non-traditionals, it's a similar process, but those companies, it's going to sometimes require us to go out and find them and contact them, because they don't know where to read about these types of opportunities. They're not attending these types of calls. So we have to go out and find them.
All right. I believe this is the last question for now. I'm a member of Energy Works, Vice's Defense Work. Do I need to sign up for this one as well, or is Defense Works enough?
It's a great question. I think we've gone through some recent updates in the Defense Works sign up page where you can opt in to multiple lists. But in the interest of being kind of redundant in a good way, I would probably go to each of the hubs that you're interested in on the Defense Works website and opt into each of the email lists. So like I said, Nautilus has its own email list, but we all are tied into the same database. And so if you just want to be careful that you don't miss out on anything, I would sign up individually. But we are in the process of trying to make it easier for you to sign up for many lists at once.
All right, well, that concludes all of the questions. Oh, we have one more. Are Nautilus and NavalX connected with the annual JIFX events via NPS? They didn't see
so FleetWorks that I mentioned earlier is a PIA that falls under Defense Works, and it is they're partnered with NPS. So we're funded by NavalX, and FleetWorks is funded by NPS. Now both of them obviously are PIAs for the Navy, and we are partnering right now with FleetWorks on some things. So as far as NPS activities are concerned, those would mostly be covered by FleetWorks, but we will probably participate.
All right, perfect. Well, so that concludes the questions for now. So I want to turn it over to you so you can give your final words before we wrap up.
Sure. Well, I invite you all on the call to connect with me on LinkedIn, and you can also email me or email Hyatt if you like. Here's my email. I'll drop it in the chat. gplaster@nautilus22.org. You know, if you have any questions or want to set up a one-on-one call to learn more, but you can find out a little bit on the website. And then, you know, if you want to explore ways that you can join the ecosystem, you know, beyond just doing it through the website, you can certainly shoot me a note. But I just want to thank the team at Navy Small Business, Ms. Washington and Ms. Thurston and everybody here, and really appreciate all of your time. Happy to take any other questions you have.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Graham, for doing this webinar for us and giving us another exciting lunch and learn. It looks like we have no more questions. So we want to thank you and your team for coming today. And thank you all for attending. And we look forward to seeing you at the next lunch and learn.